Regína Jensdóttir, you're coordinator of children's rights at the Council of Europe. And we're here in Dubrovnik, Croatia, to join with 250 participants for a conference on children's rights, Growing with Children's Rights. Can you tell me, what's the Council of Europe really doing to improve children's rights?
The Council of Europe, together with its 47 member states, has a strategy to further the protection of children and their rights in all of our member states. This is a strategy which supports our member states to really have a strong anti-violence against children agenda. Children are subject to violence in all settings, in the homes, in schools. They are victims of sexual violence by those that they trust the most. And our role is really to support our member states to have good legislation in practice, to train the professionals that are supposed to implement this legislation to ensure that children are really benefiting from the protection that the international human rights and children's rights standards have designed specifically for children. We also try to promote public service, child-friendly and child-sensitive public service, because decisions are very often taken for children without them having been consulted. For the Council of Europe, it is very important that children's voices are heard in this decision-making process and that their views are taken into consideration. We also consider important to protect children that are particularly vulnerable. That can be children that are have disabilities, children that are sent to detention, which we do not consider. We believe that children should not be behind bars. We should seek alternatives to detention. So there is a lot of different action points, but the strategy is really shaping the agenda of the Council of Europe, and it is shaping the agenda of our member states.
What significant progress has been achieved in recent years?
The most significant progress from the Council of Europe and our member states, I would say, is the fight against sexual violence of children. We have very strong legal instruments in place, the Lanzarote Convention, the committee which is going to look at how states are really implementing this convention is starting to work really very efficiently this year. I think this is a lot of progress. It is helping our member states really to have good legislation in place so that those that are inflicting this violence on children are really punished, that children are really protected, child victims of sexual violence are protected. We want to avoid children having to give their testimony to 10 different people, which is usually the case in most countries. They have to explain their suffering and the violence they've been subjected to the social services, psychologists, to doctors, to judges, to lawyers. We think this is absolutely not child sensitive and not at all in line with international human rights standards and Council of Europe standards in particular. So we are really supporting our countries in changing this way of helping the child victim of sexual violence. That's one progress. We've also seen progress in other areas. For instance, children in detention. One of our strongest committees, the CPT, the Committee for the Prevention of Torture and Inhumane and Degrading Punishment, we really have worked hand in hand with them, or they have taken their initiative to look at children in detention more closely during the past 2 years. And they are visiting centers where children are detained to make sure that their rights are being protected and that they are not being subject to violence. That's a second important progress we've seen. Last week, the Venice Commission, the Council of Europe Venice Commission adopted its first report on children's rights in constitutions, and they adopted recommendations which are focusing on the need for our member states to respect children's rights and to make sure that that legislation is in place in our member states to protect children, that their voices are heard. The recommendations also refer to the need for countries to put up independent human rights mechanisms, what we call ombudspersons for children's rights, to make sure that they are in place in our countries to protect children and to be there, make sure that their rights are properly and well respected. And this was a big achievement, and we're very pleased that this report was adopted just a few days before the Dubrovnik midterm strategy conference.
Can you tell me what the expected outcome of the conference is?
This conference is bringing together 250 participants, which is excellent because they are both from civil society. They are participants, of course, high-level participants from our member states, ministers and state secretaries, and the participants in the event are really going to help guide the Council of Europe and our countries to continue to work in the area of children's rights. We believe that it is going to help us to shape the agenda for the next 2 years, and the conference will also allow us to look at the challenges that children are facing in today's modern societies. The Council of Europe is one of the oldest organizations protecting human rights, rule of law and democracy, but at the same time we are also a very modern organization, and we are really tapping into what are the real problems that children are facing today in our era of internet, where children read books by swiping their fingers across screens. There are challenges in the areas of data protection. There are challenges in the area of how to support families and teachers and adults who have to accompany children in this area of new technologies, and we will of course continue to uphold the agenda, the strong anti-violence agenda in our member states, which is crucial for us.